and welcome back to my latest video book report. I, of course, am John Lee of thecontentmarketingking.com, and today I'm really excited to talk to you about the book Outsiders, 8 Exceptional CEOs that yada yada yada. Anyway, this book is one of the most popular books in Silicon Valley among VCs and angel investors, and I wanted to read it to get an idea of why it was so often recommended. So, the point of the book is basically that exceptional CEOs, or CEOs that are outside the standard, like Jack Welch model, tend to overperform, and they all tend to overperform out of certain schools like Henry Singletonville, which is the example they use, but Warren Buffett has often used the Graham Dodd Investing School, or Graham Dodd Investingville as a similar device. So this whole book is examining these 8 exceptional CEOs from Tom Murphy to Warren Buffett. And the 2 big things that they noticed are that these CEOs eschewed everything but managing operations efficiently and allocating capital efficiently. So when they talk about capital, they're talking about both human resources and capital assets. So I really enjoyed this book, but it also kind of clashed with my current socio-political views, in that a lot of the stuff that's talked about in here, keeping wafer-thin staffs, cutting margins, increasing shareholder value, often leads to things like what's going on right now with Jeff Bezos, where he's the richest man in the history of the world, and his workers can't go to the bathroom and are passing out from heat stroke in non-air conditioning warehouses, right? So part of me was like, I could appreciate the intelligence and the efficacy of these techniques, but on the other hand, I found them a little bit morally reprehensible. So let's get into my 3 big takeaways. Number 1 is resource allocation. The big difference between a lot of these CEOs and unsuccessful CEOs, and even CEOs who have success maybe during bull markets, was the allocation of both human resources, usually the cutting of staff and firing of people, and also the allocation of capital resources, whether it was large acquisitions, such as in the case of Capital Cities in the cable business, or Warren Buffett, whether it was share buybacks. All of these executives bought back massive amounts of their shares, up to like 90% of outstanding shares in certain situations. They didn't issue dividends, right? They made sure that they were earning money on the money they borrowed. They all used these kind of influential and unusual cash flow metrics in order to better allocate capital, right? So that's a really big one. Not making those giant acquisition mistakes, knowing when to keep capital in the business. Those are things that sink many companies like, I don't know, Tesla. So that's really important, and I never thought about that before this book. Number 2, you want to think like an investor rather than a manager. All of these executives were thinking like investors, and they were thinking in terms of share price. And this is something that I actually do think is interesting for my clients, because if you own a small business, most of you are thinking like a manager. You're thinking about how you kind of do things on the day-to-day level. But if you want to actually make profit and eventually escape your business and have some free time, you have to think like an investor and think about increasing the share price. And the share price is just your profits, right? That's really all the share price is. But you want to think about how you can increase that. And thinking like an investor rather than a manager is a very important point. And the third point was that there are kind of 2 things you want to do to protect against bear markets. You want to have, number 1, low capital debt, right? You don't want to have these big debts. One of the things that kept coming up over and over, from Warren Buffett with Geico to another example that I can't remember right now, is they would borrow money at like 3% and then invest it at 6 or 7%. And so you're paying 3%, and that little margin creates a profit, right? So low capital debts. Your capital debts need to be low. You need to not owe more money than is coming in. And the second thing was the ability to raise prices. In all of these things, the ability to raise prices, which again, kind of morally reprehensible, was one of the differentiators in surviving those bear markets when the market inevitably turns against you and conditions are bad. And that was one of the things that I thought was really interesting about this book, was that all of the CEOs that it followed were followed through bad markets and good markets, and they made really good detailed data, graphical, statistical demonstration to show how much they outperform the market by. So it's pretty impressive. The data in this book alone is very, very interesting, and there's a lot of graphs and charts, and if you're kind of a graphs and charts and fun stuff like that person like me, you'll definitely enjoy it. Overall, I would give this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I think there's some really good information in there, but I also think that it's like toxic capitalism. So I do see the value in running things more efficiently and being cutthroat, and part of me wants to be rich. But on the other hand, like, we probably need to go the opposite direction as a society from the kind of cut all dead weight, make all the money for the people at the top sort of management style that's taught in this book. So I really enjoyed it. I think it's a very good book, but it's also toxic capitalism at its like finest. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, and all that fun stuff, and I will be back to talk to you very soon.